He insists we go to the same island where he once vacationed with someone else. His refusal feels more than stubborn. It feels like obsession. I can't shake the thought that he's trying to relive old memories, and I'm only a replacement in a story that isn't mine. I still remember the moment it all shifted. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun spilling across the floor, when he slammed his hand down on the travel brochure I had spread out. The sound startled me. It wasn't loud, but it carried a finality that made me freeze. "We're going to the island," he said, his voice low, steady, and unyielding. Not a suggestion, not a discussion, an order. I stared at him, the brochures scattered around us like fallen leaves. I had spent hours researching places we could visit. Quiet towns, mountain retreats, even a river cruise. Each one promised something new, something we could share together. But he brushed them aside as if they were meaningless. His eyes locked on mine, and I felt something unsettling in them. Not excitement, not joy, but a hunger I couldn't name. That night, I lay awake listening to the rhythm of his breathing beside me. My mind replayed the way his hand had pressed down on the glossy paper, the way his jaw had tightened when I suggested alternatives. It wasn't just stubbornness. It was obsession. An obsession I knew had roots deeper than simple preference. The next morning, he began recalling details about the island with unnerving precision. "The sea there has a different smell," he said casually while pouring his coffee. "Salter, sharper. You'll notice it the moment we arrive." He spoke of a cafe tucked behind a row of palms, describing the chipped blue paint on its chairs, the way the owner always served drinks with a slice of lime. His words painted vivid pictures, but none of them felt like they belonged to me. They were memories, carefully preserved, and I was being asked to step into them like a replacement actor in a play already performed. I tried to steer the conversation toward other destinations. What about the coast? Or maybe the mountains? We could try something new. My voice was light, hopeful. He didn't argue. He simply shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin line. That quiet refusal cut deeper than any shouted disagreement. It told me my suggestions weren't even worth considering. Later that week, I found him sitting in the living room staring at an old photo album. He closed it quickly when I entered, but not before I caught a glimpse of a picture. Him on a beach, smiling, his arm around someone I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. The island wasn't just a place. It was a memory, a chapter of his life that hadn't been erased. Small incidents kept piling up. He ordered a guidebook for the island, though he already seemed to know every corner of it. He hummed a tune one evening, then stopped abruptly when I asked what it was. "Just something I heard there," he muttered. His fixation was no longer subtle. It was woven into his daily routine, into the way he spoke, the way he moved. I began to feel invisible. Every time he described the island, I felt myself fading, as though I were being written out of the story before it even began. My role was clear. To accompany him, to stand where someone else once stood, to smile where someone else once smiled. The realization gnawed at me. One evening I decided to test him. I suggested a trip to a nearby town just for a weekend. "It'll be fun," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "A change of scenery before the big trip." He didn't even look up from his book. "No," he said simply. "We'll wait for the island." That single word, "no," echoed in my mind long after. I started noticing other things. The way he lingered over certain souvenirs tucked away in drawers. A seashell worn smooth that he kept on his desk. A faded postcard with the island's name scrawled across it. He never spoke of them, but they were there, silent witnesses to a past I wasn't part of. The unease grew heavier. I began to question not just the trip but our relationship. Was I here to build something new or to help him relive something old? The thought haunted me. I remembered times when he seemed distant, staring out the window as though searching for something beyond the horizon. Now I understood. He wasn't looking forward. He was looking back. As departure neared, I packed my bags with trembling hands. Each folded shirt felt like a concession, each zipped compartment like a surrender. Yet beneath the fear, a quiet determination stirred. I wasn't going to let myself be erased. If he thought I was a replacement, he was wrong. I would uncover the truth behind his obsession, even if it meant tearing open wounds he wanted to keep hidden. The night before we left, I stood in the doorway watching him. He was writing something in a notebook, his brow furrowed, his hand moving quickly. When he noticed me, he closed it and smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I wondered what he had written. A list of places to revisit? A plan to retrace steps already taken? Or perhaps a memory he couldn't let go of? I didn't ask. Not yet. But inside me a storm was gathering. Suspicion, fear, anger, all swirling together. I knew the trip would not be what he imagined. And I knew I would not remain silent. The uneasy beginning had already set the stage. The island was waiting, but so was the truth. And I was ready to face it no matter how much it hurt. The moment we stepped off the boat, the air wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. The island was breathtaking, white sand stretching endlessly, palm trees swaying in rhythm with the wind, and the sea glittering like shards of glass under the sun. Yet beneath the beauty, I felt something pressing against my chest, as though the place itself carried secrets too heavy to remain buried. He walked ahead with a confidence that unsettled me, his stride purposeful, his eyes scanning the shoreline like a man returning home rather than visiting. "Look," he said, pointing toward a small pier. "That's where the fishermen gather at dawn. You'll love it." His smile flickered, but it never reached his eyes. I followed silently, each landmark he pointed out feeling less like a discovery and more like a reminder that I was walking in someone else's footsteps. At the hotel, the truth struck harder. The staff greeted him warmly, their faces lighting up with recognition. "It's been a long time since you were here," one of them said, handing him the key with a knowing grin. My stomach tightened. He laughed politely, brushing it off, but I caught the way his shoulders straightened, proud almost, as if being remembered validated his return. I stood beside him, invisible, expected to fit into a mold already shaped by another. The room itself carried echoes. A balcony overlooking the sea, curtains faded from years of sunlight, and a faint scent of jasmine that clung to the air. He opened the windows wide, inhaling deeply as though reclaiming something lost. I watched him, wondering if he realized how much his familiarity stung. Our walks through the island became a theater of memories. He grew animated, pointing out corners, shops, and paths with a spark I hadn't seen in months. "This cafe," he said, pausing by a small building with peeling paint. "They serve the best lime drinks. I used to sit here for hours." His voice softened, and though he didn't say her name, I heard it in the silence that followed. His eyes lingered on the doorway, and I felt myself vanish, replaced by a shadow I couldn't compete with. I tried to break the spell. "It's lovely," I said, forcing cheer. "Maybe we can make our own memories here." He nodded absently, already lost in recollection. The words fell flat, swallowed by the weight of his past. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and violet, I confronted him. "Why does this place matter so much to you?" My voice was steady, though my heart raced. He chuckled, deflecting. "It's just beautiful, isn't it? Who wouldn't love it?" But his silence afterward betrayed him. He stared out at the horizon, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the railing. I knew then he was hiding something he wasn't ready to share. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of waves crashing against the shore was relentless, each one echoing my doubts. I slipped out quietly, leaving him asleep, and wandered through the dimly lit streets. The island at night was different. Quieter, shadows stretching long, whispers carried by the wind. I found myself drawn to the locals, their faces weathered, their eyes curious. At a small shop, I struck up a conversation with the owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes. "You're with him, aren't you?" she asked softly. I hesitated, then nodded. Her smile was gentle but knowing. "He's been here before. Long ago." She didn't say more, but the weight of her words lingered. The next day I continued my search. I spoke to fishermen at the pier, listened to their stories, and pieced together fragments of his past. They remembered him, his laughter, his presence, the woman who once walked beside him. They didn't mention her name, but their voices carried a tenderness that made my chest ache. Each discovery deepened my resolve. I wasn't here to play a role in someone else's memory. I wasn't here to be invisible. If he thought I would quietly accept being a replacement, he was mistaken. I began exploring the island alone, deliberately choosing paths he hadn't shown me. I wandered into markets filled with vibrant colors, tasted foods he hadn't mentioned, and spoke to people who didn't know him. Each step was mine, each moment carved into my own story. One afternoon I stumbled upon a small chapel tucked away behind a grove of trees. Its doors were open, the air inside cool and still. I sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I thought of the woman who had once stood where I now stood, of the memories he carried like treasures, and of the role I was expected to play. My heart burned with quiet defiance. When I returned to the hotel, he asked where I had been. "Just walking," I said simply. He looked at me, suspicion flickering in his eyes, but he didn't press. That moment told me everything. I was no longer following his script. I was writing my own. The island was beautiful, yes, but it was also haunted. Haunted by his past, haunted by the shadows of a love that wasn't mine. Yet in those shadows I found strength. I found clarity. And I vowed that I would not leave this place without reclaiming my place in the story. The Island of Shadows had revealed itself, not through its scenery, but through its whispers, its echoes and its truths. And I was ready to face them no matter how much it hurt. The chapel's silence still lingered in me when I returned to the hotel. I had seen enough, heard enough, and felt enough to know the truth was no longer hiding. It was waiting for me to drag it into the light. That night, I sat across from him on the balcony, the sea stretching endlessly behind us, and I let the words spill out. "I know she was here," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled against the armrest. "I know she left suddenly. And I know you've been trying to bring her back through me." He froze, the glass of wine halfway to his lips. For a moment I thought he would deny it, laugh it off, dismiss me as paranoid. But his silence was louder than any denial. His eyes shifted, not to me but to the horizon, as though the waves could shield him from the truth. "Say it," I pressed, leaning forward. "Say what this trip is really about." His jaw tightened. Finally he set the glass down and spoke, his voice low, almost reluctant. "I wanted to see if it would feel the same. If I could recreate it." The words cut through me like a blade. Not because they were loud, but because they were honest. He wasn't here for me. He was here for her, for the ghost of a love that had slipped through his fingers. I sat back, the air thick between us. "So I'm just a stand-in," I whispered. "A shadow in someone else's story." He didn't answer. His silence was confirmation enough. Anger rose in me, hot and sharp, but beneath it was clarity. I wasn't going to let this trip end with me fading into the background. If he thought I would quietly play the role of replacement, he was mistaken. The next morning I left before he woke. I walked through streets he hadn't shown me, spoke to people he hadn't bothered to know, and carved out moments that belonged to me alone. At a small bakery, the owner offered me warm bread and a smile, asking nothing of my past. At the pier, I watched children chase each other, their laughter unburdened by memory. Each step I took was mine, each breath free of his shadow. When I returned, he was waiting. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone sharp, almost accusing. "Living," I replied simply. "Making my own memories." He frowned, unsettled by my defiance. For the first time I saw uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't in control anymore. That evening I chose a restaurant he hadn't mentioned. A quiet place tucked away from the main road, filled with lanterns that glowed softly against the night. I ordered dishes he hadn't described, flavors he hadn't recalled. He sat across from me, uncomfortable, as though the unfamiliarity stripped him of the script he had been rehearsing. "This isn't the cafe," he muttered. "No," I said firmly. "It's mine." The balance shifted in that moment. He saw me not as a replacement, but as someone who refused to be written into another's story. Days passed and I continued to resist his attempts to drag me into the past. He suggested revisiting the pier where he once spent hours. I declined, choosing instead to hike into the hills, where the view stretched far beyond the island. He tried to lead me to the cafe again, but I walked into the market, weaving through stalls filled with spices and fabrics. Each choice unsettled him, each refusal chipped away at his control. One night he finally broke. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Because I'm not her," I said calmly. "And I refuse to live in her shadow." His face hardened, but beneath the anger was something else. Fear. Fear that his illusion was crumbling, that the past he clung to was slipping away for good. I didn't relent. I continued carving out my own story, speaking to locals, exploring corners of the island untouched by his memories. I found joy in small things. A child offering me seashells, a musician playing a tune in the square, the taste of fruit I had never tried before. Each moment was mine, untainted, unborrowed. He grew quieter, his resistance fading. He watched me, unsettled, as though realizing he could no longer control the narrative. On our last day, I stood on the balcony, the sea stretching endlessly before me. He joined me, silent, his eyes heavy with defeat. I thought I could bring it back, he admitted finally. But I see now, it's gone. I turned to him, my voice steady. Love cannot survive in borrowed memories. You can't rebuild the past by dragging someone else into it. He lowered his gaze, the truth settling between us. When we left the island, I carried no souvenirs, no borrowed fragments of his past. What I carried was strength, the quiet revenge of reclaiming my own life. Revenge wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was the act of refusing to be anyone's second chapter, of walking away with dignity intact. As the boat pulled away, I looked back at the island one last time. Its beauty was undeniable, but its shadows no longer held me. I had faced them, resisted them, and walked free. The reckoning was complete. And I was no longer a shadow.